and the fucking plane just flies, you know, whenever you want to fly. I know. That's why I'm comparing the average experience.
Has always had a love-hate relationship when it comes to train travel. The country was literally built on the backs of the railroads, and the US used to have the biggest and the most well-funded rail network in the world. But if you ask anybody that's taken the Amtrak, they'll tell you that that's not exactly the case anymore. The US has fallen woefully behind the rest of the world when it comes to train travel. So what the heck happened? How did the United States get so far behind, and does it have any chance of catching up? To find out the answer to that, I'm going to take the Amtrak from here in Los Angeles.
This is when you're Matt Walsh, but not transphobic, and train. You're not transphobic. You're a trainophile.
All the way to New York City. And I'm going to have plenty of time to think about it since it's a 70-hour journey. I guess I better get started.
A foamer?
The entire length of my journey from Los Angeles to New York is about 4 days long. And for the first leg of my journey, there weren't any sleeper cars available. So this is what my living space looks like for the next 2 days, which, as somebody that's years old, should be really good for my back. The journey I'm taking is pretty different than it would have been about 100 years ago. To see the differences, let's take a look at this US map. The year is 1916, and there's about two.
Dude, that's so sick. I mean, this is incredible content. I really respect this person for making this content. Shouts out to Vox for doing this.
254,000 miles of railroads, the highest number there's ever been in this country. The Pennsylvania Railroad, or the Pennsy as it was referred to, I feel like that nickname could have probably used a little more work. Nevertheless, it was the largest corporation in the world at the time. It's difficult to illustrate how influential these companies were and how much railroads were interwoven into the fabric of American life. They were responsible for the temples of their time, like Penn and Grand Central stations. Also, you would not believe how amazing train travel could be back then. Sure, they had basic, boring train cars, like the one I'm riding, but the upscale trains featured chandeliers, barbershops, pianos, and food service that would make the Four Seasons look like Boston Market.
That's sick.
One menu featured oysters, consommé, and celery-fed duck. The bad news is, my train didn't have ducks that were fed anything. I ate the Thai red curry street noodles, which, although I'm pretty sure they were just a microwave frozen package, were actually pretty good. And although the accommodations were a far cry from crystal chandeliers, they were comfortable enough. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the conductor speaking. It has now been 5 hours and 15 minutes, which is the time it takes to fly from LAX to Newark Airport, and we are still in California. It's only 9 o'clock.
To be fair, it's pretty big.
But it already got dark outside, so there's nothing to look out through the window, and there's no Wi-Fi apparently, so I guess I'm just gonna go to sleep. They leave the over...
Wait, there's no Wi-Fi? That's kind of wild. But I guess like the train is going so slow that it'll ping from station to station, but you can still definitely get, you probably still have coverage.
Had lights on all night, but luckily I brought my trusty eye mask. I also brought some earplugs, which should come in handy because I'm sitting right in front of some iPad kids who are watching movies at full volume with no headphones. So that's fun. All right, I'll see you in the morning.
God, it's so embarrassing. There's nothing more beautiful than an overnight train, dude. I've done it when I was a kid between Istanbul and Ankara. It's so much fun. It's so fucking cool. Ay, ay, ay. It is...
Did I sleep well last night? I'm going to say no. I'll spare you the details, but imagine getting literally kicked in the head by the woman in the seat next to you. I wound up retreating to the observation car to sleep, which was less than ideal.
Okay, to be fair, I've been on overnight trains and they have beds. Like, and I'm talking in Turkey. You know what I mean? Like, So it's wild that they don't have little cabins with like bunk beds in them. That's crazy. My man, I'm talking in Turkey. It wasn't a fucking luxurious experience. The point is, in the United States of America, you should at least have not just like freight trains, but intercontinental railroads that carry passengers that have fucking overnight bunk beds at least.
Like an astronaut in space, I'm trying to move around as much as I can so that my muscles don't
motherfucker, like
deteriorate.
trains in India have it. You know what I mean? Like people are like, dude, luxury.
During my journey. So let's talk about how American trains went from gilded pleasure palaces to this. Part of the reason why railroads became so wildly successful in the first place is because they were run by what were affectionately termed robber barons. Men like Cornelius Vanderbilt, Jay Gould, James Fisk, and J.P. Morgan. These guys were ruthless, anti-labor, and really corrupt.
Unlike the billionaires of today who are not ruthless, anti-labor, and really corrupt, except yes, they are, but also they post the most annoying shit on the fucking planet.
Which was great when it came to building an expansive kingdom of highly profitable rail companies, but bad when it came to just about everything else. As a result, the train companies became pretty universally hated by the general public, as seen in what passed for scathing satire at the time.
Now then, Jim, no jockeying, you know? Let 'em rip, Commodore. Don't stop to water, or you'll be beat.
The federal government saw the kind of crap these guys were pulling and was like, whoa, 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 you can't do that. So they instituted a bunch of regulations, which, among other things, set fixed rates for the railroad companies, and also prevented them from raising their fares or changing their service without the government's permission. This didn't seem like that big of a deal at the time, because as historian Robert Self-Henry said, the problem, to some minds at least, was how to keep railroads from making too much money. After all, railroads were still, by far, the most efficient and the best way for most people to travel. This all obviously changed when affordable automobiles and later air travel came into the picture.
So much so that by 1956, only 4% of passenger travel.
Yeah, which is why it should have been even cheaper, right? All of those other, including the newer forms of transit, should have automatically made it cheaper, not just for trains, but like commercially viable from the jump for airplanes because they're competing with trains and cars. Except no, it didn't, because we live in the United States of America, and instead of like a free market, the exact opposite happened, where they just like restricted the number of trains and made it less profitable, and overall just a tenuous affair to take a train.
Travel was on trains. When you take into account that 40 years earlier, that number was 98%, you can see how much the US's priorities had shifted when it came to travel.
The train companies were far from a monopoly anymore, but they were still being regulated as if they were, which was killing them. Okay, so right now we are being held on the tracks to let a freight train pass, and this is actually the perfect time to talk about something. Private commercial passenger trains have never been very profitable. The lifeblood of the industry has always been these, freight trains.
Yeah, because you can't push that much product on airlines. That's it. That's the reason. Like, it's hard to do. It's hard to push that much product through. Like, we're talking chemicals for your water supply. We're talking all manner of different things. It's much harder to do with trucks, and it's much harder to do with airplanes. So they still utilize the vast, expansive rail network that we have since the time of the fucking rail barons.
But rail companies were always forced to provide passenger service as a benefit to the public. So when the rail companies began to suffer and then eventually fold, the government had the idea to take the responsibility for passenger service off the plates of the rail companies, who could then focus on the profitable freight side of the business. They took all the passenger service and combined it into one company, which is how in 1971 we got Amtrak, which stands for the American Train Track. Again, what is up with these nicknames?
Amtrak makes it easy come, easy go to more than 450 cities in the USA.
But here is the thing. Amtrak was designed to fail from the beginning. That may sound ridiculous, but let me explain.
First of all, the government created Amtrak as a for-profit corporation.
Despite the fact that virtually no passenger service anywhere has been profitable. After all, the government broke off all the passenger trains from the rail companies because they weren't making money.
When the government formed Amtrak, they tasked it with employing innovative operating and marketing concepts to develop the potential of modern rail service. And how much did Congress give them to do that in their first year of operation? Just $40 million.
Their budget has gone up a lot since then.
Their budget for the year 2022 was $2.3 billion.
Which sounds like a lot, doesn't it?
But when you take into account that the federal highway budget for the same year was $64.3 billion, you begin to see the inequity.
To put it even more into perspective, the sum total.
Yeah, which, by the way, this is pretty obvious for members of this community who are all transsexuals, but you know what else is not profitable? Fucking highways, dude. Where's the profit? Where's the profit on a highway? Oh, in that situation, you're like, well, it impacts commerce, right? It impacts commerce, so like it's actually decent and good, right? Oh yeah, we have to do that. It's like, I hate this fucking country so much. It's just we subsidize everything. Transgender, yo, not sexual, let me fay out. Come on, chatter. Come on. Come on. Why is it that like 98% of this community's humor revolves around like, oh, he said a thing that sounds like another thing that's political. Like, we are literally the memes that everybody else makes fun of us. I said train sexual, okay? Train.
Total of all the subsidies that the US has allocated to Amtrak in its entire history is less than 1 year's funding for the interstate highway system.
This right here shows
Tolls and gas pricing. Oh yeah, no, totally, you're right. Tolls and gas pricing do make up for all of the subsidies afforded to all the money given to the highways. Oh wait, no, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. Why are you saying that? Just like commercial passenger trains do not actually fucking commercial passenger trains do not make up for what is needed in terms of capital to invest in an adequate rail system. Tolls and gas taxes, which are, by the way, state by state, is different in each individual state, and also again heavily subsidized by the fucking federal government. You're just absolutely incorrect. You're not realizing that neither is profitable, but it doesn't matter. One gets all of it because they are accompanying the oil and gas industry, which is profoundly important, and the other one is not. The other one is seen as an alternative to something that the oil and gas industry would want to completely eradicate.
This is where America's priorities lie when it comes to travel, and why Amtrak has failed to majorly expand or innovate. Okay, so we just got to Chicago. I got off the Amtrak about 45 hours after I left Los Angeles, and needless to say, I do not smell very good. I have about a 7-hour layover here in Chicago, and right now I'm in Union Station, which is actually kind of amazing.
As you see, I got a chance to put on some clean clothes, which feels amazing. And now I'm just here in Millennium Park, rolling around with my suitcase like a dang tourist. And I'm just trying to enjoy not being on a train as much as possible before I get on the second and final leg of my journey.
The bean kicked in. Bro, he went to Chicago and had some Jimmy John's. Come on, brother.
I've achieved the holy grail of my own private room. I want to show you my favorite feature.
I know Kai is under my wheels. I've pushed her away. She keeps rolling her ass over because she wants to be as close to me as possible. I don't know what else to do about it, okay? I know. I am very aware of what's going on.
Of the entire room. You're gonna like this.
What?
Hidden sink.
Oh,
This
I
train
thought
is
there was
little
a
bit
toilet.
more dynamic, shall we say, than the last one. But I'm hoping that all the movements will just help rock me to sleep. When I woke up, we had reached Ohio, about 2,600 miles through my journey and 50-something hours. There are a lot of reasons why people still want to take the train. A big one is the environment. According to a study by the University of Pennsylvania, a long-distance train trip produces 37% less emissions than taking a flight. Trains are also much safer than cars. You're 17 times more likely to die while driving than taking a train. Flying and driving can be faster and sometimes even cheaper than taking the Amtrak, but they're both often miserable experiences. Going through TSA, dealing with flight delays, or being stuck.
This part is 100% true. Before you... Oh, man. Dude, getting on a fucking Shinkansen that operates like butter, that leaves every station in approximately, I think it's like a minute and a half, like 90 seconds, that is always on fucking time, that obviously isn't as fast as a plane, but without any of the hassle of the traffic to the fucking the traffic to the, oh my god, the terminal, taxi time, yeah, the airport, I meant terminal, airport, whatever, I was forgetting words. Taxi time, landing time, TSA time, all of this shit. Oh, it's so good. It actually ends up comparing the best train service to the worst of plane service. No, I'm comparing the best of the train service to the most regular routine plane service. That is ridiculous. Now, I'm not going to sit here and act like there are always distances that you can there aren't any distances where the train is beaten out by the plane. Of course there are. But the reality is that planes on average, like the plane service on average, unless you are living in a city where the airport is directly at the heart of the city and there's no traffic due to adequate public transit, that is the only way to reduce traffic density in any urban environment. Even then, what I just explained to you, get TSA Pro and then first class boarding for planes, and it's not that bad. Nutritious secret admirer. Dude, the Shinkansen is a public service. You're comparing a public service to paying your way. Yeah, I can also fly private, dumbass. Yeah, this guy's so stupid. This guy's so dumb. Like, you could just fly private and then you don't have the same taxi time and the fucking plane just flies, whenever you want to fly. I know. That's why I'm comparing the average experience in terms of commercial travel, in terms of like regular fucking travel by way of a train versus a plane. Yeah, of course, a private jet would be faster than a fucking Shinkansen. My man said, just fly private, dude, and avoid all the issues. Anyway.
Stuck in traffic and not being able to do anything because you need to be driving.
Okay, calm down. You don't have to call him the absolute dumbest piece of shit ever. He already said he's dumb, okay? Jesus Christ, Chatter. Calm down.
While I've been on Amtrak, I've been able to just stare out the window and see the country.
I love trains too, but holy fuck. I mean, the Shinkansen ain't cheap either. The Shinkansen covers the same distances that plane travel would cover. That is the reason why I'm using it instead of using regular subway stations, okay? Nobody gets on a fucking Shinkansen to go the distance that they use Shinkansen to travel long distances. And for the record, it's like $100. It's not cheap. You're not wrong. It's certainly not cheap. But it's comparable, especially comparable to a plane. It's cheaper. And oftentimes even faster. Cheapest is $60 last time I was on. It was $120 for me, but I went all the way up to Kobe. So oh my God, people saying Japanese railways are private. Okay, dude, it's still public transit, man. Like, it's still a part of public transit. And it's also heavily subsidized by the government, too. $120 to Kobe to Tokyo one way. I think it was $120 from Tokyo to Kobe. No, it was more than that, actually, because we got first class cabin, and the first class cabin was like, I think, $30 more. But it doesn't matter. I gave you the economy seat price. I think it was 120 versus 150. Anyway, there are actual there are people who have calculated the differences, like the time differences between like covering not super long distances, obviously, but covering relatively long, like medium distances with train, especially the bullet trains, versus air travel, and the bullet train wins because of the things that we just mentioned.
Country go by, or read a book, or take a nap, or whatever. I've been able to wander around the train whenever I want and stretch my legs. And I've had the enjoyment of having my own private little room. And this is with Amtrak being perpetually and profoundly underfunded.
Imagine what it would be like if this were evened out. So I made it. All total, it took me about 72 hours and 17 minutes, which granted, it would have taken me between 5 and 6 hours to fly that distance. I don't actually know the distance off the top of my head, but I'm gonna add it in post right here. But here's the thing, I had a good time. It was actually really fun. Aside from a couple of hiccups at the very beginning, it was a really pleasant, memorable experience. I got to see parts of the country that I had never seen before. And overall, dare I say, it was a pleasant experience? Right now, Amtrak covers roughly 21,000 miles of passenger rail in the US. But when you look at the map, you can see its sparse coverage, routes that don't connect, and sorry, Wyoming and South Dakota, you don't get any trains. If the United States took Amtrak off life support, it would revolutionize the way people travel around the US. When he was retiring, former Amtrak president Graham Claters said, "When I came to Amtrak, I was convinced I could save it, but finally came to the conclusion that only the American public can save it when they say they want it." Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go take a much needed shower and go to sleep in a real bed. I gotta rest up for my flight back to California tomorrow.
For me, one of the best parts of riding the Amtrak is just throwing on some Phoebe Bridgers and wistfully staring out the window for hours on end.
That's so Austin Ox coded for